I have this complete fortune that I just fell into my lap. I didn't make it happen. I got born in a place where, I got a great education and I'm healthy and I can make a great living. What am I going to do with my privilege? How am I going to contribute to the world? How am I going to help all these other people that I am totally dependent upon? And so that's what I've been trying to do. Basically pay it forward some way. Teaching, meditation, being a good friend when I can. Trying to encourage other people to do the same.
Welcome, everyone, to interview 00030, interview 30 of the 10,000 Heroes show. I'm Ankur Shah Delight, and today's guest is Leigh Brasington. Leigh is a well-known meditation teacher and expert on the Jhanas, who I've known about for a while. I was reading one of his books earlier this year, super inspiring, and I had a number of aha moments while reading it, and a lot of questions. So I reached out to Leigh, and he was so good about answering my questions, I thought this guy would be great for the show. And he was. So one thing that's coming up for me a lot these days is the incredible power that we each have as human beings when we are aligned and using our energy and intention for things we really care about. There's really so much we can do, as you can see from Leigh's example and many of the other people on the show, but we have to be working with and not against our passion. That really comes out in this interview, and maybe it's a common thread in my personal definition of what a hero is. Somebody who's identified their passion, their purpose, and has really oriented their life around it to work with it, and therefore have this mirroring experience of internal harmony, internal satisfaction, and really being able to get things done according to their vision in the world around them. So I'm really pleased to present this interview. I hope you enjoy it. And as I've mentioned for the past few weeks, we do have a listener survey. The link is in the show notes. If you haven't yet, please take that survey, and it'll really help me orient this podcast and see what the match is between what I'm trying to do and what you're looking for. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the show, Leigh Brasington. I have a question that I really like to ask. And, the show is called 10,000 Heroes. And so in some way, the notion is that there's something heroic about your life. I don't know if you would resist that. So many people would.
Heroic, but it's certainly been interesting and somewhat unique.
Yeah, fantastic. And so I would love to start with just, if you could reflect and share with me one thing that's happened in your life that you think has both been successful and worth sharing, in the sense that everyone who's listening could learn from it. And that might be an attitude, might be a decision, might be a mental model, might be a daily practice, just something that you found has really worked for you, and that other people, it might also work for others.
I've often said that the best decision I ever made was to take a 3-year trip around the world. Now, I'm not going to recommend everybody go take a 3-year trip around the world. Actually, that was a little too long. But I learned so much. It was totally fascinating. And with this COVID on, I'm not even going to recommend anybody go to anywhere. But the 9 months I spent in Asia, completely different culture, changed me so much compared to anything else I'd ever done. Broadened my horizons, literally and figuratively in every way possible. It was interesting because, I'd been on the road for a year and a half and was just getting ready to leave New Zealand. And when I left on the trip, I told people, I'll be gone for 6 months to 3 years. I figured 6 months was long enough to save face. 3 years, that's all my money was possibly last. And so I've been gone 18 months, and it was like, I can go home now. This is good. I've done some really cool stuff. But I was in Wellington, New Zealand with some friends, and they said, you should throw the I Ching and see what it says. And so I threw the I Ching, and it said, a journey across the waters is indicated. And the other really important thing was the fellowship of humans. And it was like, that's interesting. Well, I guess I guess maybe I should go to Asia. I should at least go to Bali, see what it's like. I mean, Nepal was number 2 on my list because I wanted to go trekking there. Yeah, well, Asia turned out to be a better education than the 4 years I had at university. And I had a really good university education. I learned so much there. But just being around people in a completely different culture, understanding this is what it's like to be human, as opposed to this is what it's like to be an American, a product of Western civilization, but to go someplace and really tap into what it's like for people in the third world and in completely different cultures, different religious outlooks, everything was so important. It also was my first real introduction to the spiritual dimension of life. My father was a Presbyterian preacher, so I grew up with religion, but I wouldn't say there was a lot of spirituality there. But just being in Asia, I mean, you go to India and you can't help but experience the spiritual dimension of life. But it was also there in Bali and in Thailand and other places that I went, Burma particularly, Nepal. So yeah, just what I learned, the skills I got for being in a new situation and being able to handle it and have a very good time. I told people I was going on the trip, I was seeking adventure and education. But what I found was education and adventure.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. There's a lot for me to pursue in there. So one of the things, you said you grew up in the United States?
Yeah, in Mississippi, no less.
In Mississippi, son of a Presbyterian minister, you had a religious education that was just part of your upbringing. And then at what point did you do this travel?
So I was 29 when I left. So 79, 80, 81.
Okay. So this is not like a right after high school, I'm going to go travel the world thing. This is, you had already embarked on some adulting of some kind.
Yeah, I had a 4-year college degree, BA in mathematics. And then I started work as a computer programmer. And so I had worked as a computer programmer. That's where I got the money.
In the 70s?
In the 70s, in the early 70s.
Okay.
I started programming computers in 1968 in college. So, yeah.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you went on these travels. You got to Asia, after 18 months. And you said you had this experience of, you knew what it was like to grow up in the US, then you went to Asia, and you knew what it was like to be human. So for me, there's a little missing link there. Did you understand what it's like to be in the third world or grow up or to live in Asia, and then you're able to abstract the commonalities to see what it was to be human? Or was there something, how did those things connect?
I'd go to Asia, and because I've been traveling for 18 months, I was really good at meeting the locals. And English is widely enough spoken, so I got to know the locals. In particular, I remember coming to parent treaties on the south coast of Java. And these 3 high school kids came up to me. They wanted to practice their English. And just talking with them, their English was good enough we could carry on a conversation. I mean, they had been studying English. They just wanted to practice it more. So I could ask them about their life, and they could ask me about my life. And I remember we were in an area where there were lots of people on the beach, and we're walking down, and we get to a point where there's very few people, and they get scared. They want to go back to where the people are. Me, I'm happy. There's no more people around. It's just us and the sand in the ocean. It was like, oh yeah, they are much more connected to other people than we are in the West, particularly in America. And by the time I left that beach, so I was friends with them for a day. They had to go back to school. And I realized that the basic unit of society in Indonesia and basically Asia, the third world, was the family, not the individual. And, just getting that experience just from talking with these kids was great. And it was stuff like that on and on. And I remember in Nepal, hiking on one side of this valley, And it was quite a drop down to the river and then back up the other side. There was no village on the other side, but there was a plot of land over there that was cultivated. And to get there from the nearest village, which was on my side, you had to climb down probably 1,000 feet and then climb back up 1,000 feet. And there was a little tiny shack there, where you get out of the noonday sun, I guess, or whatever. But you really wouldn't want to spend the night in just this little shack because this is the Himalayas. It's cold at night. So just to survive, somebody is climbing down and climbing back up and cultivating that land and climbing down and climbing back up. And just to see the differences and how much harder it was for everybody than it is here for us here in the West.
Yeah, no, that really resonates with me. I remember I spent a bunch of years traveling in India as an adult. My family's from there, but I didn't spend too much time there as a child. And I remember getting onto a bus that was empty. It was like the beginning of the bus. And then the next person got on. It's basically an empty bus. And they came and sat right next to me. It's just that same experience of like, wow, if this was in the US, that person would have taken like the opposite side of the bus, like we do with the urinals or whatever. But in India, they were just like, oh yeah, this is clearly the right place to be, is right next to this guy.
But yeah, Indian buses are a trip. I remember some of the roads, they're paved down the middle, 1 lane wide, but it's a 2-lane highway. And so the buses come at each other, play chicken. And at the last moment, they dip a wheel off into the dirt.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay. Or an empty bus pulling into a bus station and everybody running to the bus. People diving in the windows.
Okay, so that's a huge factor in your life, something you'd recommend in a non-pandemic time.
I think everyone should go spend 6 months in a third world country, living in, guest houses, not first-class hotels, guest houses, local hotels, eating in local restaurants, taking local transportation. Do that for 6 months if you really want to have a good life, because you will learn so much. One of my good friends from college was a psychotherapist, and I saw him right before I left on the trip. He knew me really well. He'd lived below me his freshman year, my sophomore year. And we had been good friends, until I graduated. And we had reconnected. And I had learned a lot from this guy. In fact, he was the person that eventually turned me on to Buddhism. And when I came back from the trip, that night, I arrived in the middle of the day or whatever. And that night he says to me, Leigh, you can become anything you want, can't you? And I stopped and I go, yeah, I guess I can. In other words, I had learned so many skills that my friend knew I was so different within a few hours. And the way I was different was that I had a confidence and a belief in my own ability to do whatever I set out to do. And yeah, it's true. He was right.
Yeah. And that's just, I hear you say that, and a belief in my own ability to do whatever I set out to do. And that's just what I wish for, right? For everybody in for every human being to be able to have that sense of empowerment, self-efficacy. Yeah. And so one of the ways that might be available is through travel. And I think for me, I'm curious if this resonates with you. Part of the glory, the joy of that travel in that way, of the positively destabilizing influence, was the lack of control.
As I tell my students now, you can't make the ocean go flat, but you can learn to surf. And so I got surfing lessons because, yeah, it was out of control a lot. And it was just like, okay, how am I going to deal with this situation? Not only how am I going to survive this situation, how am I going to thrive in this situation?
So I had kind of expected to hear that you were, you're known as a meditation teacher. I was kind of expected to hear that you would have gotten into that during your travels in Asia. But it seems like that wasn't the case.
I became aware of Buddhism as something that was interesting. And in fact, I wrote down for, I guess it was January 1st, 1981, my New Year's resolution was the Eightfold Path. Not that I had any clue what that actually meant, but it just seemed like a good idea.
Yeah, I'll just master the Eightfold Path. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, have right view. I mean, yeah, try and see what's really going on. Have right intention. Okay, yeah. So I don't want to hurt people. I want to have fun. Whatever. Right? I didn't quite have right intention down correctly, but yeah, right speech. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Right action. Okay. Yeah, definitely. That's what I'm trying to do. Right livelihood. Yeah. Okay. I'm a computer programmer. That's pretty good. I can do better than that. It turned out, but the right effort, yeah, I had no clue about that. Right mindfulness, I had no idea what mindfulness was. Right concentration, I knew concentration. I was a computer programmer. I did lots of concentration. I just had no idea what was meant there, but it just sounded like good stuff, and I wrote it down and forgot about it because that's what you do with your New Year's resolutions. But I had become enough aware of Buddhism that it was like, yeah, this seems kind of nice, but I had been really turned off to religion. And so religion and spirituality did seem to have a lot of belief in it. And I was told that the Bible was true. I was to believe the Bible was literally true. I mean, Noah the ark, Daniel in the lion's den and everything. And then the summer between my graduation from high school and going off to university, I realized, yeah, this is just more Easter Bunny and Santa Claus stuff. And so I just rejected religion. And then I discovered, okay, there's the spiritual dimension to life, but, well, my spiritual practice after I rejected literal Christianity was ethical hedonism. And so I was just mostly interested in having a good time. I wasn't going to hurt people, right? I wasn't going to screw people over to have a good time. But yeah, I was going to have a good time. And so that's still where I was. But I at least knew there was a spiritual dimension to life. And I encountered that obviously coming across Asia. But even when I got back to Europe, going to the cathedrals, being in the catacombs, there were places that had a spiritual feel to them. I couldn't really relate to it. It wasn't until actually I connected with my first teacher, my root teacher, Venerable Ayakema. And she said, yeah, there's nothing to believe. The Buddha said, Ehipassiko, come and see for yourself. Well, okay, as someone with a scientific bent, I could come and see for myself. If there was nothing to believe, I'd check it out. And that's when I actually got interested.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. So, but before we go down that road, because I do want to learn about how you met Ayakema, what she taught you. And that's actually one of my questions I want to ask every person is about a teacher that was heroic for you. And maybe that's Ayakema, maybe it's someone else. But before that, just in the spirit of not making assumptions, you use the word spiritual, about the spiritual dimension of life. I have a notion of what that means to me. I'd love to know, and for our listeners to hear, kind of how you would define that, or what does that word actually mean to you, especially for people out there who may be in a similar position to where you were when you were 18 or where I was, where you've rejected religion and the whole understanding that there's something to salvage in that hasn't yet come online. How would you describe spirituality?
So there's the material world, the laws of physics, mathematics. Well, mathematics is getting a little out there, right? Especially when you get to foundations of mathematics, the Gödel's theorem and so forth. Yeah, all right. But I didn't think of that as spiritual when I encountered it, but it's tending in that direction. So there's the physical material world, and then there is something happening at a level that's beyond what can be described as, laws of science or something like that. In other words, when the materiality starts interacting in certain ways, there are unexpected results from this. The whole is more than the sum of the parts. And so the spiritual dimension of life is the difference between the whole and the sum of the material parts. And so the fact that we can communicate is actually a spiritual thing. I'm sitting here exhaling and flapping some loose skin in my throat. That's throwing sound waves at my computer. They get picked up by the microphone. They get digitized. They get transmitted through the internet. They get turned back into sound waves. They come to you. That's pretty amazing, but that's material. But the fact that you can understand what I'm talking about, that's really kind of interesting. I mean, I'm taking a concept in my mind I'm breaking it down into words. I'm throwing these words at you. You're taking those words, you're reassembling in your mind into something that hopefully resembles the concept I had, and we communicate.
Yeah. And even more deeply, like my hope is not just to understand the words or the references behind the words, but a sense of your conscious experience that you were trying to put into those words.
We can go even further than just the words and my thoughts, but the whole milieu of how we're trying to communicate. So I would say the spiritual dimension of life is the dimension of life that's beyond what can be described materially. And that includes, consciousness. I mean, modern science says consciousness is a hard question. They don't know how it comes about. Well, I don't know how it comes about either, but clearly it's there. What's going on here? And the fact that we can relate to other people we've never met. I mean, I arrive on this beach in southern Java, and these high school kids I'd never met, we were great friends by the end of the day. You know, what's going on there? How does all this come about? The fact that it's possible to concentrate your mind and then investigate reality, and just sitting there with your eyes closed, having a deeper understanding of what's really going on at a profound level. That's pretty amazing, and that's spiritual. So in essence, the spiritual dimension of life is a dimension of life beyond the material dimension of life.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for going down that road. I felt that might be the case, but it's just good to, you could have said something about a network of elves that are, propelling us through space. So I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page with that. So how did you meet Ayakema, and what was her influence in your life?
Okay. So first I want to go back to my psychiatrist friend, who lived in Northwest Arkansas. And I showed up there at the end of 1984, basically crippled. I had screwed up my knees running and was having trouble walking more than a few hundred yards a day. And I was depressed. And, I went to his house and he's like, "You're depressed." And I'm, "Damn right."
You would be too if you couldn't walk.
Yeah. Among the other things he did was he handed me Chogyam Trungpa's book, Shambhala, and said, "Read this book." Okay. And so I started reading the book. And when I finished, he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, it's pretty good." He says, "Well, you got to meditate." I was like, "Oh, that's so boring," because I had tried before. "What did Trungpa tell you?" Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, my best friend from college, who lived an hour and a quarter away, is a chiropractor in Berryville, which we refer to as Berryville. And he fixed my knees. They were out of place. And I could suddenly start to walk okay again. It still took another 6 months of healing before I could go hiking or anything, but my whole life started getting better. So I was now open to Buddhism, in particular Trungpa's brand of Tibetan Buddhism. But I was back home, and one night I had a dream, and the dream consisted of two words: tantric yoga. And I was like, "What?" Yeah, I woke up. I was like, "What? What's that mean?" So I was living in San Francisco, and I walked over to Clement Street to the Green Apple bookstore. Great bookstore.
Which is basically the late 80s version of Google.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. Yeah. And so I go to the Buddhism section, and I buy all the books they had that had the word Tantra in the title, all two of them. One of them I was not able to read. I mean, I just didn't have a clue until maybe 10, 15 years later. And then I found it to be a really profound book. The other book, I could read some of it. But I also picked up a book by Huston Smith, The Religions of Man. It's got a different title now. I think it's The World's Religions now. I had met Huston Smith when I was a freshman in college. He came to give a series of lectures. The local Phi Beta Kappa chapter in where I went to Rhodes College in Memphis had invited him to give a series of lectures. So the first thing I ever heard about Buddhism was Huston Smith lecturing on his time in a Japanese monastery. And so I saw that book by him and I was like, I remember this guy. So I took it home and I read it cover to cover. And the thing that made the most sense was Buddhism. All right. So now I'm a little more open to Buddhism. I was seeing a massage therapist at this time because of my knees. And she was a student of Ruth Dennison, who was a very amazing teacher who had a retreat center down near Joshua Tree in Southern California. And eventually, Mary said to me, well, there's going to be a retreat down at Ruth Dennison's place. You should go. I was unemployed at the time. It was like, yeah, okay. So she said, the teacher's giving a talk in the San Francisco Zen Center Wednesday night. You should go check it out if you like her. Okay. So I went to the Zen Center and I came and gave a talk. I don't remember what it was about, but I remember her clarity. And I asked a question at the end and her answer was, made total sense to me. So I signed up for the retreat and off I went. I quickly learned that I had never meditated before in my life. What I thought was meditation wasn't what Ayakema thought. She was a very, very good, clear teacher. Anybody that studied with Ayakema, if you ask them about her, one of the things they will mention pretty quickly is her clarity. When she gave a talk, it was really clear. I wasn't very good at the meditation thing. It was boring. It was just really boring. But luckily, it was the 10-day retreat, and on about day, 6 or 7, she showed us the body scan, the moving your attention systematically over the surface of your body, that she had learned from a student of Goenka's teacher, Robert Hover. So Robert Hover studied with U Ba Khin, and Ayakema had learned the technique from Robert Hover. And I could do the body scan because it was busy enough to keep me entertained, and I didn't get too bored. And what I discovered when I finished like a 40-minute body scan, I could actually follow my breathing. And so that became my practice for the next 3 years. When Ayakema talked about Buddhism, she didn't talk about it with anything to believe. Like she said, there's nothing to believe. Just come and see for yourself. And she put out the basics, Four Noble Truths, the 5 hindrances, there's just the basic stuff that you need to know about Buddhism. She didn't talk about the jhanas. At that point, she wasn't talking about them in public. If somebody was getting to sufficient concentration to be able to enter the jhanas, then in the interviews, she would teach them the jhanas, but not publicly. But I was nowhere near being anywhere where I was going to learn any jhanas. I was just barely able to meditate, but it was good enough so that when I went home, I was able to continue meditating. And then 3 years later, I was at Ajasa's place in Thailand, stumbled into the first jhana. I didn't know it was the first jhana, but it's what it turned out to be.
Yeah, you might have to just give a brief description or definition of the jhanas, just the briefest, just so people know what that word means.
Yeah. So the jhanas are 8 altered states of consciousness that are brought on by concentration and yield even more concentration. This allows you to stair-step your way down into deeper and deeper levels of concentration. The reason for doing this is that when you exit the deepest level that you have a mind that is much more able to investigate reality and see what's actually going on.
And that's something that you mentioned earlier too. One of the benefits or transformative parts in your life is being able to see more of what's going on in reality. Help me translate that. Like, are you talking about material reality? You're able to see like what's going on in material reality with higher definition?
That's true, but more what's going on in my mind and my body. Okay. What the Buddha says is after you have a jhanically concentrated mind is to investigate your body and your mind. See the impermanent, unsatisfactory, impersonal nature of the body and of the mind. See that your mind is dependent upon your body. They're not the same thing, but they're very definitely interrelated. So this exploration of body and mind is what I mean by seeing reality more profoundly. That exploration also includes exploring material reality, exploring the world around me and everything else, and seeing that, oh yeah, everything is impermanent, everything is changing, nothing's going to give me lasting satisfaction. It's not only my knees that aren't going to give me lasting satisfaction, even that chocolate cake is not going to give lasting satisfaction. And that everything is impersonal. Everything is dependent on other things. Nothing stands alone. It's one hugely interconnected network. That's probably the deepest that it gets, is just this huge interconnected network of all reality.
And you're able to say those things right now, this the impersonality, the unsatisfactoriness. What was the third? The transitory impermanence. You can say that. It's an intellectual thing. I can hear that. I intellectually know it's true. But if I understand correctly, just from the experiences I've had, you're having like a visceral experience of the reality of those truths more than just how we're hearing it intellectually right now in this discussion.
Yeah. So what Ayakema said an insight is, and that's what we're after, was an understood experience. And the example she used, let's say you've never had a mango, and somebody describes a mango. It's a fruit. It's got this peel that you got to peel off. Inside it's juicy. It's orange, both inside and outside. It's a big seed in the middle. It's sweet. It's sticky. Delicious. Do you know what a mango is? No, you think it's a peach. It's only when you bite into the mango. So what we're looking for is the experiences of the impermanent, unsatisfactory, impersonal nature of reality and understanding those experiences. And if we get deep enough experiences with deep enough understanding, it's very transformative.
Okay. So I'd love to follow that up, because I could see how it's entertaining in the way that any of our conscious experiences can be entertaining, either, with drugs or with fasting or, sleep deprivation. We have different ways of perceiving the world, different experiences that can be fun, that can be not fun. But where is this transformation supposed to take us? Like, I'm guessing and I'm hoping that you'd advocate that we all do this. And what's going to happen when we all do this? And why is it good for all of us that we all do this?
You get a deeper understanding of how reality works, and then you stop making the stupid mistakes that work at cross purposes to the way reality works. It turns out it's much better for your whole life if you're working in harmony with the way reality works rather than working at cross purposes for the way reality works. I mean, it turns out eating sweets is not really the best thing you can do. You get a little bit of pleasure there, but long-term turns out not to be such a great thing. If you understand, oh yeah, I should be eating all this sugar. It's making my belly fat. It's rotting my teeth and all the other heart disease and so forth. Then you realize, oh yeah, even though I can get some short-term pleasure here, I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to do it in very small amounts, right? It's that way with everything. Once you understand how reality works, you understand, okay, this is something I need to do full bore, really get into. This is something I can do occasionally. This I should avoid completely. Today is the day that the Russians have invaded the Ukraine. And Putin doesn't understand how reality works. And it's going to be painful for a lot of people. Just like George Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld didn't understand how reality worked when they invaded Iraq. And it's 100,000, 1 million dead Iraqis, millions of people with PTSD. Yeah, I don't see a much better outcome for what Putin's doing in Ukraine. This is going to be a really horrible thing. But if you understand how reality works, you wouldn't make stupid mistakes like that.
Okay, this is great, because I could see someone else from a different training or different discipline saying that people like Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Putin are the few people that actually do understand how reality works and how the global geopolitical game works. And for years, Putin's been outmaneuvering the governments in the West in order to make this a reality right now. So, and I think there's a level of truth to that, but I want to distinguish what you're saying when you're saying he doesn't understand how reality works from what that analyst is saying. Like, what is it about the reality that he's understanding that he's not understanding?
He doesn't understand that we're all vastly interrelated. That he can't just move in and take over someplace without there being unexpected consequences. I mean, look what happened with the invasion of Iraq. ISIS, so much went wrong in the Middle East with so many people. We still got horrible instability in Syria. Iraq is not exactly a great place. I mean, this was just not something to make the world a better place.
But if someone is compared about their, there's like the small self, the lowercase s, and then there's like the larger self with all of us included. and then there's the now, and then there's the longer term time. You know, if these decisions are coming from what's good for little me in little now, like are Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld really suffering from what happened in Iraq and ISIS? Is it negatively impacting their lives personally? Is that what you're saying? Or is it just, I mean, obviously it's negatively impacting a lot of other people. But was that a concern to them in the beginning?
It's them at all in the beginning.
So then it's not unexpected what happened. Like they're not like,
oh, no, it's not unexpected, but they didn't expect ISIS. They didn't expect, the getting bogged down in Afghanistan for how many years? I mean, that war went on for so long. And what did we gain in Afghanistan? Nothing, except a lot of dead bodies.
Sure. I'm just trying to bring, the wisdom that you're sharing, because I know you're right, that someone who's paying attention to this higher level of consciousness is understanding reality at a more precise level. I'm just trying to connect that with what we see all around us, these really powerful people. You brought up the example of the Ukraine doing things that clearly aren't good for us. So like, what's the relationship? Like Putin's not thinking about us, you or me, or the people in Ukraine. He doesn't have our interest in mind anyways. So yeah. So if he knew how reality worked in terms of like, if he was a more advanced meditator, how would that improve things?
Putin's probably the richest person on the planet right now. Okay. He could, if you understand how reality works, he could say, oh, I'll just take my $1 billion and go off and have a great life. He's not content with having the capacity to do that. He wants more. He hasn't come to the realization that more doesn't bring you what you want. In fact, as it turns out, it's letting go that brings you what you really want as opposed to acquiring more. So he's going to try this. I don't think it's going to work long term. The people that keep him in power are going to get tired of all the sanctions if the West indeed does follow through and basically just takes all Russian assets in the West, makes them unavailable to the oligarchs back there, and they're going to kick Putin out of power.
Okay, so your approach is that he, like all of us, like Aristotle said, humans seek the good. We all want to be happy. Putin's trying to be happy. This is his strategy, invading the Ukraine for personal, enduring happiness, and it's just an incredibly misguided strategy because it's not going to lead to that outcome for him.
Correct. Yeah.
And if he knew how reality worked, if he spent more time meditating, he would have come to that conclusion and tried a more effective strategy.
If he had a genuine spiritual practice that he was genuinely interested in, he would have come to that conclusion. But he's KGB. He's not interested in spirituality. He's interested in power. And he thinks power is going to give him what he wants. And it might, but it's going to give a lot of people what they don't want. I mean, how many Russians are going to die in this conflict? How many Ukrainians are going to die in this conflict? How many people in Europe are going to be cold because they can't get the natural gas from Russia because the Ukrainians blew up the pipeline that brings the natural gas to Europe? I mean, that hasn't happened yet, but I could see something like that happening. So there's going to be a lot of suffering that's going to come down from this. It might selfishly benefit Putin short term. I don't think it'll benefit him long term. If you understand the interrelated nature of all of life, then you wouldn't even think about doing something like this. The example I use is if your left hand gets caught, your right hand isn't going, oh, you stupid hand, don't do that. It just helps the left hand get uncaught. Well, we're all as equally connected at the spiritual level, not at the material level, but at the spiritual level, we're as connected as your right hand and your left hand. And we all need to work together to make the planet a better place.
Let's like to dive back into that with a slightly different angle. So as a teacher for 25 years, what do you think, and we want, we have this shared goal, we want people to achieve this level of insight so they can have the experience of interconnectedness. What is the most likely way for someone to have that felt experience? Like someone who's never meditated before, they listen to the show, they're like, all right, great. What do I got to do to have that experience of interconnectedness so then I can then have a whole other perspective of how I organize my life and how I seek happiness?
So I can't tell you the best way. I can only tell you a way that worked for me and does work for other people, which is, all right, sit down and train your mind. That means learn to meditate. Learn to generate a concentrated, indistractable mind. And then use your indistractable mind to investigate reality, both physical reality and your internal reality. And what you're looking for is the impermanent and unsatisfactory nature of, well, everything. And at the deepest level, what you're looking for is the fact that everything, including you, arises dependent on other things. And you can see this if you do meditation and investigate reality efficiently and for a long enough period of time. It's not an easy thing. All right. I can tell you about it. You might understand it and believe it intellectually. But when it really becomes transformative is when you have experienced it for yourself.
Yeah, great. But let's say someone is listening and they're sold on this idea. And not only are they sold on it, but they're really into it. They want to prioritize it. And they're like, okay. And they're, they have a level of wealth and privilege so that they're able to. And so someone's listening to it and they're like, all right, I'm going to take the next 3 months off. Or next year, or just tell me, Leigh, what do I got to do to maximize the likelihood that this happens? Because I hear you. I hear that this is more valuable than anything else I could dedicate my efforts towards. It's going to make me a better business person. It's going to make me a better parent. It's going to make me happier. It's going to make me a better spouse. I want to prioritize this. What can I do to maximize my likelihood of success as soon as possible?
So the first thing is learn to meditate. Now, I'm not going to be very good at telling you how to learn to meditate because I don't teach beginners. All right. There's lots of people out there teaching beginners. I could give you some references of where to go. There's a place called Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City, California. They have a website. You go to their website, you look for their beginning classes, and they have online beginning classes. There's a resource where you can start to learn to meditate. And you're going to need to get good at meditation. You're going to then need to go on some meditation retreats where that's all that's happening. You probably want to start out, I started with a 10-day retreat. Most people start with something shorter, weekend retreat, 5-day, a week, 10 days. Eventually, you want to be able to go on a month-long retreat where you're just meditating all day long. Sitting meditation 6 to 8 hours a day, plus you're doing some walking meditation as well. And you're hearing a teacher who knows what they're talking about, teaching you not only about meditation, but what the Buddha had to say if you're pursuing the Buddhist practice, and how to use what you're doing in a more efficient way to investigate reality. For me, it was, the first 3 years, I was just sort of basically having a meditation practice. I wasn't learning that much. Then I started stumbling into the first jhana. And again, I still really wasn't learning that much. I was learning a little bit. But then I reconnected with Ayakema, and she taught me the rest of the jhanas and taught me how to use them as a warm-up for the investigation and gave me practices to do for the investigation. And then over time, and we're talking decades of investigating, reality just became more and more clear. I could see the interconnectedness much more deeply than I'd ever thought about it. And my life got better. And it was transformative. So it's basically, learn to meditate and do a lot of it. While you're doing that, it's probably going to be helpful to learn more about the spiritual tradition you're in and what they're teaching. What I know is Buddhism. They're the suttas of the Buddha. They're difficult to read, but there are books that are much easier to approach. I mean, Ayakema has some wonderful books to give you background material. Ajahn Buddhadasa has several really excellent books, which would be helpful for background material. I have a reading list on my website, leighb.com. Click on the reading list and a ton of books there to read. So study and practice. That's what I would suggest.
Okay, so I'm gonna push this a little bit, and this is gonna be a little bit funny. I do actually feel that this is like the slow food movement version of meditation.
Yeah,
like the way you learned it took decades. I've spent 15 years practicing and feel like I've just come so little. And through some interactions with you over the past couple of months, my practice has really grown in terms of my experience. And I'm very happy and I'm very grateful for meeting you and happy that we have this moment. But I want it to be faster and easier for people. And I want it, because for me, I was not able, and I think maybe for you, when you learned about meditation, it wasn't something you were going to drop everything and prioritize. It took a while for us to get more commitment. And so just imagine someone who hears your words and really is ready to drop everything and prioritize it. Is there something fundamentally contradictory about efficiency and gaining these skills? Like, could they just sign up for a 90-day retreat right now, meditate 10 hours a day, have a teacher, and at the end of that 90 days, have like a 70% chance of being concentrated enough to consistently drop into the first jhana? Is there something something fundamentally wrong with that approach?
Yeah. How many gold medals have you won in the Summer Olympics?
Oh, just zero. Still a zero.
Yeah. You probably would need to train really well before you could do that, right?
Yeah.
And is there a shortcut where you could win 2 medals at the upcoming Paris Summer Olympics in 2024?
Okay. So I really, I take part of the point, but I really dislike the metaphor, because the whole point of meditation, as far as I'm concerned, is that not only can we all get to this higher level of understanding, but we should. And in the evolution of our species, we all will, which is not possible with the Olympics. Only a couple people could win the medals.
And the problem with the simile that I used is, it's extreme, but it points out that, you actually have to do a lot of prep work to get anywhere. I don't think most people could go on a 90-day retreat as their first meditation experience and last 90 days. Okay. I had been practicing for 30 years before I ever went on a 90-day retreat. I'd done 5 weeks. All right. I'd gotten that far after 6 years. Right. But it's hard to be on retreat that long. I mean, most people are going to have to start out kind of slow. That's the way it goes. Do you know the Sufi teaching figure? He's a very cool guy. He has all he's crazy wisdom guy. And so they asked Mullah Nasruddin to give the talk in the mosque one Friday. And he gets up and he goes, "You want to know the shortcut to full awakening?" And people are like, "Yeah." You want to get there quickly? Yeah. You want to not have to work so hard? Yeah. Tell us, Mullah. And he says, "Yeah, I do too. When you find it, let me know." And he said, "I don't know a shortcut. The only way I know to get there, it involves a lot of work and it's probably going to take some time. You're going to have to learn to meditate. Most people, it's difficult. It's just not something you can sit down and be good at right off. A few people can. And you're going to need to get good enough at it so that you're comfortable doing it all day long for several days in a row, maybe even 10 days in a row. And this is going to take a while. I have met people that hit the ground running and made a lot more progress in the first year than I did, definitely. But it's still even taking them a while.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask the question another way, because I don't mean that necessarily should be quick nor easy. I'm just looking for something reliable, or maybe from another perspective, I want our society to grow, human society. So how would we organize our educational system, starting with preschool all the way through university, if this was our goal? If the goal of our society was to come out with people who really had concentration, awareness, understanding about the unsatisfactory nature of it all, of the impermanence of it all, how would you propose that we organize our educational system? So now I'm giving you like 18 years, What would you do if everyone, we all have to go to school, I have a 5-year-old daughter, she's going to kindergarten. What should be the curriculum starting at kindergarten or preschool all the way through university to increase the likelihood or maximize the likelihood that we had these enlightened 22-year-olds.
I really had. Okay, here's what we got to do. But what I can say is that the movement to teach kids mindfulness in grammar school is a very good start. And that should definitely be encouraged. It should be, reading and writing, arithmetic, and mindfulness. It should be that much of a core part of what's going on. Will enough people get deep enough so that they can start teaching, actual meditation courses as opposed to just mindfulness courses? I don't know. I don't know about that. I've worked with some young people, but they're late teens and they're pretty dedicated, and they grew up in a family where spiritual practice was part of what was going on. Their parents meditated, etc. So I know that it wouldn't have worked for me. I'm glad they didn't have attention deficit disorder as a diagnosis when I was growing up, because I probably would have been diagnosed with it. But it wasn't that I had attention deficit disorder. I wasn't challenged enough. I was bored. I had a really good 6th grade teacher, and she gave us way too much homework, which meant I actually had to work. And I learned a lot of great study habits from this teacher. But, that was the first time where I couldn't just basically coast and whisper to my buddy next door, in the next seat over and things like that. Teaching me meditation at that time probably wouldn't have worked at all. Mindfulness at that time, maybe. I really wasn't ready to learn meditation myself, looking at who I was, until I came back from that trip around the world. And then I was, okay, now I was open to it. Before that, I just wasn't interested at all. So, teaching mindfulness in schools is a very good idea. And then maybe there's some students that, you can actually teach to meditate. I mean, build up their concentration and not just be mindful. And they can, start gaining these sort of insights. But I'm a hippie computer programmer who wound up, teaching concentration skills to advanced meditators. And so there's a lot that I don't know. And as far as, educating people, learning from scratch, whether they're children or adults, it's not something I've really studied, worked with, tried to do. So they're going to have to be other people figure that out, not me.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm just looking for that vision. The people who wanted to transform our government towards, war, imperialism, or whatever they're interested in, they have some great long-term vision. They're able to execute on their plans. I'm interested in the same thing. Like, if we really want to have a fundamentally different society with a different relationship to interconnectedness and ethics, we're going to need a vision of how it's going to happen. I don't think we have that, but we'll work on it.
Yeah, well, we've got problems to solve. The pandemic, and we're doing a really crappy job of solving it. And we've got global warming to solve. All right. So, there are all these science fiction stories about the aliens come and all the Americans and all the people of the world come together and fight off the aliens.
Didn't happen with the pandemic.
It didn't happen with the pandemic, and it's not happening with global warming. And that's what we need to do. Somebody needs to come up with a vision of how to get everybody to come together, to work together to solve the pandemic, and then take the momentum of that solution and move it into the global warming problem. I mean, that's how we're going to get a better world.
Yeah. Yeah. So 2 other things I wanted to get into. Maybe we can do one of them now. I'd love to hear a story about one of your personal heroes. Like, who's a hero to you and why?
Yeah. So I look at the people I really admire. The Buddha, right? Yeah. Okay. Padmasambhava took Buddhism to Tibet. That's pretty amazing. There's Nagarjuna. He was a brilliant teacher. There was Shantideva. Now, these are all early Buddhist teachers. They're also all happen to be Indian. Another person I really admire would be Gandhi. Oh, another Indian, right? India has made a lot of my heroes. Other people that I really admire, Dr. Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela. All these people were striving to make the world better. The last 3 I named were tackling social problems. And the first ones I named were basically laying out a way to practice so that you could see what the problems were. And maybe you'd have some ideas on how to address them. But I think maybe Dr. King would come to the top of the list in terms of someone that I would feel if I could emulate him, that would be really, really good. I mean, to be willing to go to prison, to willing to, give up everything, to willing to die for his cause and actually wind up dying for his cause. That was pretty amazing. He was a pretty amazing guy. I mean, he had his flaws. Probably all of these people had their flaws, but to see that he had a dream and he was able to pursue that dream relentlessly in the face of overwhelming odds, that was brilliant. That was absolutely amazing. And so, yeah, to have a clear vision and to be able to just go in that direction, no matter what comes up, that's brilliant.
So yeah, so it's not only the clarity of the vision that you'd like to emulate or dip into, but the courage, the perseverance, and this kind of underlying selflessness or just fearlessness about death allowed him to be so strong. Beautiful. I wish that for you too, and for me. I think it's worth emulating. Yeah, thank you. And then, we started this interview with the question about something you really felt like you did right and that you would recommend, unhesitatingly. Is there anything you'd like to share about something that an attitude that you carried with you for a long time or still carry, or a practice or decision that really did not serve you and that you would not recommend as another gift to the audience?
Wanting to be in control. I was not in a fearful place, and I had a fair amount of control for, a little kid. I was privileged. My father was very much appreciated in the community, and so my family was very much appreciated. So I had maybe it wasn't a silver spoon, but it was a pretty nice spoon, right? And but I was still fearful. I was still afraid. I can maybe guess into why some of those things were there. And I wanted to be in control. I wanted to know what was going to happen and how I was going to, lay it all out. And that was one of the things about that 3-year trip around the world. I was out of control a lot. And I learned to be comfortable with not being in control of things. And so, the striving to always be in control did not serve me. It may be harder for people who are dealing with trauma to overcome their need to be in control, because I wasn't dealing with trauma. Okay. And I still had difficulty overcoming my need to be in control. But if you've had trauma, then that is a big thing in your life and colors everything that you do. So healing from that trauma to the point where it's okay if you don't feel like you're in control, so that you have that feeling, I can manage this. I'll figure it out, as opposed to I know what's going to happen and I know how I'm going to react.
Yeah. So you had that kind of control fantasy from your youth up to the point where you engaged on this 3-year trip, and that was
right,
kind of shattered during that trip.
Yeah, it just pulled away. It just no longer was I in control. It was just like, okay, I have to figure out today. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I call it the fantasy, because we're never actually in control, but there's a point at which we actually realize it. And for many of us, that's going to India and realizing that, I never had control over any of this shit anyways.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. I feel so blessed to have you here. I'm really excited. Is there anything that you also wanted to talk about or that you've thought about before starting this today?
No, mostly I just show up to these podcasts and people ask me questions. I do what I can to answer them. This one has been really good because it's touched on areas that yeah, I haven't talked about on other podcasts. So this is really excellent. The one thing I would say is that, so I went on one retreat, and at the start of the retreat, I thought, yeah, what do I want to learn on this retreat? I want to learn about the interconnectedness that those people are already talking about. I want some experience of that. And on the second day of that retreat, now I was in pretty good shape for that retreat because I had done a 24-day retreat with Ayakema a month before. So I was still in really good shape. But on the second day of that retreat, I got my lunch and I went outside. It was July in the San Francisco Bay Area, gorgeous weather, no fog where I was, and sat down to eat my lunch. And when I poked my fork into my lettuce, I saw the farm worker that had picked the lettuce. I didn't see him with my physical eye. I just saw, oh, I'm dependent on that guy. And the whole flooding network that had brought me that piece of lettuce came into my mental vision. And I dropped my fork and started crying because I saw the interconnectedness. We don't stand alone. We are completely dependent upon this huge network of other people, most of whom are not in as good a shape as we are. They're working these menial jobs, picking the lettuce, or driving the trucks, or standing on their feet all day at the grocery store checking out the groceries. They're working hard, and yet we couldn't do what we do without their support. So one of the things that really struck me on my trip around the world was how privileged I was. I had dozens of people come up to me, become my friend, and then say, I have a dream. I want to come to America. Can you help me come to America? And I came back with the sense of, okay, I have this complete fortune that I just fell into my lap. I didn't make it happen. I got born in a place where, yeah, I got a great education and I'm healthy and I can make a great living. What am I going to do with my privilege? How am I going to contribute to the world? How am I going to help all these other people that I am totally dependent upon? And so that's what I've been trying to do. Basically pay it forward some way. Teaching meditation, being a good friend when I can, trying to encourage other people to do the same.
That's beautiful. And that's, I mean, to me, that's heroic. You know, that's what it is. Thank you.
Yeah, that's where the spiritual path takes you. Yeah, thank you.
That concludes another episode of the 10,000 Heroes podcast. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you to our guest, Leigh Brasington. Your hosts are Ankur Shah Delight and Nathan Ramos. The artwork is done by Pierre and the theme music by DJ Plainview. We have a new audio editor, Martin Santagada, so thank you to all those guys as well. If you like the show and you want to support our mission and our growth, there's a couple of things you can do. I think the main one is to reach out and let us know how the show has affected positively, I hope, your life. We have an audience survey, but you can also just email us at info@10kh.show or let us know at Twitter. Our handle is 10khshow. Another thing you can do is just send this episode or any of the episodes that you've enjoyed to your friends. I think that's the way it's going to grow. So we really appreciate you listening all the way. Love to have a positive role in your life and to help redefine and deconstruct the notion of what it is to be a hero, to broaden that field and allow everybody to understand the heroism that they have already within them. Thank you and take care.